Welcome to Corpstruction, a show about the missions, activities, and employees of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Unless you live on a mountaintop, you're probably within a few miles of a levee. Communities in every state and the District of Columbia rely on levees. Nearly two-thirds of Americans live in a county with at least one levee. Because flood risk reduction is in the federal interest, many miles of those levees are inspected and monitored by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. In fact, flood risk reduction is a primordial mission of many Corps of Engineers districts. Today I'm joined by Tammy Conforti. Tammy is a Special Assistant for Levee Safety at Headquarters, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Tammy, welcome to Corpstruction.
Hello, thank you for having me here today.
How did you end up at Headquarters? What's sort of your background?
Sure. A little bit about myself. I'm originally from West Virginia. I have a bachelor's degree in civil engineering and a master's degree in risk management. I've worked actually for the Corps of Engineers for over 30 years, and all my experience has been working with either flood-related projects or different specific flood-related programs. I actually started out at the Huntington District, and I worked in the areas of like geotechnical engineering and planning. And then I worked for a short amount of time for the Institute of Water Resources of the Corps of Engineers on the Silver Jackets program. It was shortly after that, I then accepted a job at Headquarters to help the agency create our own specific agency levee safety program. So over the past 14 years, I've solely been dedicated to the field of levee safety at Headquarters. And I view levee safety as really trying to bring together the best science and practices to help manage flood risk in the communities that are behind these levees.
You're not too far from West Virginia then, even being in D.C. So you ever get back there?
Actually, today I live in Alexandria, Virginia, and I haven't been back to West Virginia for probably a few years now. I think about 3 years ago, I went back and was able to visit the Huntington District. And what's great about Huntington is it's a small town. So a lot of the folks that I basically went to school with and started my career with in Huntington are still with the Corps of Engineers there. So it was great to chat with them and catch up to them and kind of see all the different changes that has happened within the Corps there and the town itself.
As a special assistant for levee safety at Headquarters USACE, what all goes into that job?
Well, as special assistant, I help oversee our agency levee safety program, but I mainly help advise leadership on a variety of issues related to levees. So they could be issues kind of related to future federal investment decisions on levee projects, different types of agency-wide policies. And then on occasion, I will help assist with project-specific issues because, it's not one size fits all. And so there are a lot of things that, come up to Headquarters that we kind of help facilitate and resolve on a case-by-case basis. But currently, and we're here to talk about that today, I've been really honored to have a role of leading a very diverse and dedicated team in the development of an actually new nationwide program, the National Levee Safety Program.
Yeah, can you talk about that that National Levee Safety Program and how it's different from the USACE and LSP?
Sure. So within the Corps, the Corps of Engineers is a federal agency, and we're an agency that can conduct numerous activities related to levees. And our ability to implement these activities are specified in some manner in legislation. So, for example, some of these activities can include partnering with communities to construct levees that the community themselves later has to maintain. The Corps has some responsibility to maintain actual specific levees. And then the Corps, we also have programs that help provide technical assistance or information related to levees. So as a very large agency with these numerous responsibilities, the Corps decided to create a agency-specific levee safety program really to provide ourselves with an internal organizational structure so we can be more effective and efficient in how we ourselves implement our specific responsibilities. But we're not the only ones involved with levees in the country. So the Corps has different responsibilities related to about 2,000 levee systems across the country, but there are actually over 7,000 levee systems that exist. And responsibility for all those other levees can really vary between federal, state, or local governments, tribes, or even private entities. So the goal of the National Levee Safety Program really is intended to help provide resources and support to everyone that has roles and responsibilities related to levees, not just the Corps of Engineers, with our bottom line goal really being to improve community resiliency in areas behind levees.
And that includes working pretty closely with levee sponsors, getting the word out, making sure that they understand what's needed and listening to their community. Is that one of your aims as in that program?
Absolutely. Our key stakeholders, of course, are our own levee sponsors that we work with, as well as other levee owners and operators. But it could also include emergency managers, right? Because they have a role to play in the full flood risk management picture. And it could also include community folks that deal with floodplain management decisions. So that's the complexity of all this, that, there's a lot of different entities that have a role to play here. And I think this national program is going to be a great tool to kind of help pull together all those different roles and responsibilities and help move us in kind of a more consistent direction for levees.
Can you talk about why it's so important for people to understand the flood risk in general, especially if you live near a levee?
It's just such a long history with dealing with flood risk. But, a lot of times when communities and folks that live behind levees, they may not be aware that they're actually living in a floodplain, right? Because, their community, there's this perception that if I'm able to buy a home, I'm going to get fully informed and basically I'm going to be safe. And so through this program, and there's been a recognition over the past several decades that, there's still a lack of general awareness about flooding issues, or maybe perhaps the levee's role in the community to help manage that flood risk. I think a lot of progress over time has been made, but I do think one of the things that may be challenging is understanding flood risk. It can be complicated, it can be confusing, especially when you have different, I'll say, entities or governments, having a role in this. So, for example, FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, they oversee the National Flood Insurance Program. And they, again, would touch a community. And that community may have a levee in their community that the Corps helps oversee. So, it'd be very important that the Corps and FEMA reach out to this community with one, consistent messaging to help that understanding. And I think that's really kind of the goal of what we're trying to do to help improve public awareness, and do so in a manner that helps improve the understanding of it in a consistent way.
Yeah, like avoiding those 100-year floodplain terms, or explaining them at least so people really understand terms like that or phrases like that, like 100-year floodplain. What does that really mean,
Yeah, exactly.
Is there a PL 8499 connection to you, and how deep do you get into that role with the emergency management side?
The PL 8499 rehabilitation program is a voluntary program administered by the Corps of Engineers. And that program basically offers assistance in repairs of flood risk management projects if the structure complies with the criteria for eligibility. So that rehab program really deals with, that very specific Corps authority to do that. So where I kind of overlap with that program is, with the levee safety aspect of it. And because levees really are the most prevalent type of infrastructure that participates in that Corps program. But, again, kind of pivoting back to the National Levee Safety Program, those specific core lead programs are kind of, I want to say, a little bit separate and different. This National Levee Safety Program is really trying to package up not just the core resources, but all the best practices that are out there for levees, and provide that in a more comprehensive way as a resource, for the nation.
What's important for people to understand about NLSP and what it means?
Well, we continue to experience periodic flood events in this country, and those flood events continue to shine the light on the importance of levees. And flooding has consistently been the most costly natural disaster we've had to deal with in the U.S. And we have been studying it over many, many decades. But we've learned a lot, and we made a lot of progress. But throughout the decades, if you look through all the studies, it's been interesting because the recommendations for areas of improvement, especially for levees, kind of revolve around the same four areas. So first, there's always this recognition that there's a need for a national approach to understanding and managing levees. Second, there's a need for public awareness, better public awareness of flood risk, which you had brought up. Third, there's always this need for timely data. Where are all the levees? What's their condition? And how do we make that information more accessible to people so everyone can make a variety of decisions? And then the fourth thing is really understanding the complexities and of all those different roles and responsibilities. As I mentioned before, you might have different group of people that make floodplain management decisions. You might have different folks that are responsible for evacuation. You might have a different group of people that maintain the levees, but all of those responsibilities interrelate. So how do we create this framework that better clarifies all those different roles and responsibilities? And the bottom line is, to answer this need for moving us in a better direction with levees, Congress enacted the legislation that gives the Corps of Engineers and FEMA the responsibility to create this National Levee Safety Program, and really in order to provide those people with those resources to help make progress in all four of those areas that I mentioned.
So how big of a team do you work with on this? You mentioned that you had a diverse team that you work with. How big is that team, and how satisfied are you with where you are right now?
Well, I have a group of about 10 people. The team has been together now since 2020, and we've been laying out the strategy to design this program. It's been super exciting and somewhat scary at the same time. I mean, this is a very different role from the traditional role that the Corps of Engineers is usually in, where we are used to setting a very prescriptive plan and a schedule, and we charge forward to accomplish the schedule, really tailored around what the needs of the Corps is. Here, we're focused on the nation. And we're going to let this program take us where our stakeholders need it to go. So there's a lot of uncertainty with that, because we have to learn along the way. But the team I've got working on this are the most passionate and dedicated group of people I've ever had the pleasure of working with. So I couldn't be more thrilled with what has been accomplished so far, and I really look forward on what the next year or two is really going to turn out to be as this program continues to be further developed.
I mentioned risk and understanding risk associated with levees earlier, but do you think that the NLSP can be a catalyst for renewing an appreciation for levees?
I actually think this program, this National Levee Safety Program, can be a catalyst for renewing an appreciation for managing flood risk even beyond levees. As we started having conversations about how to implement this program, we really saw this as an opportunity to recognize that decisions about levees can't be done in isolation. Floodplains serve very important functions for us, and levees exist in those floodplains, and we need water. So we use water for different purposes like recreation, transportation, hydropower, water supply. The National Levee Safety Program, I think, can really help make progress in shining the light on helping us find solutions that allow us to readily access the benefits of floodplains and try to meet multiple objectives. But another interesting thing, and again, I think I mentioned before that this program is, and the design of this program is really intended to be led by the Corps of Engineers and FEMA. It also prevents another huge opportunity for us in flood risk management. So related to flood risk management in this country, there are two other national level programs that own a piece of this challenge. You have the National Flood Insurance Program, and that program is administered by FEMA, and it touches more than 22,000 communities across the country. Then you have the National Dam Safety Program, which is also led by FEMA and that's heavily supported by the Corps of Engineers because we help maintain the national inventory of dams. The National Dam Safety Program encompasses 90,000 dams across the country. And if you think about it, in many areas of the country, levees and dams occupy the same watershed in the same floodplain. So it really makes sense to look at opportunities and how these three national programs can start to be aligned and be complementary now, either now or into the future. Because really for all three of these programs to be successful, they're gonna have to, we're gonna have to work with each other, as I mentioned before, to kind of use the same terminology to talk, start sharing data between those programs. And I think if we can achieve that, we're gonna better serve the public in flood risk management.
With a lot of the, especially smaller communities, I mean, I see a lot of the levee program here with our people, and I've gone out to places in Kansas and Oklahoma, and you have different levee sponsors, and you mentioned the emergency manager and their role, and in some cases, the emergency manager is essentially the lead levee sponsor person. How important is it, especially for smaller communities who may or may not have the funding to invest in a lot of these types of infrastructure needs? And like we said, it is in the federal interest. How important is it that FEMA and the Corps are involved in that process of assisting those communities?
I think it's very important. I think overall, nationally, there's this recognition that we need to do better and try to reach out to those smaller communities and make sure that they have access to the services that these federal programs are really intended to provide. And so, for the National Levee Safety Program, we've been having and documenting like a strategy on how can we better learn those needs and make sure we're offering those types of services and opportunities for those communities to actually participate. Because they may not, like you said, have the same resources or ability, to actually get engaged or even, participate in some of our, webinars or other public meetings. And I think, making sure, and I call them kind of underserved communities, again, how can we do better in making sure we understand their specific needs, and how do we better at least take that first step and understand them, and then try to help work towards improving how do we provide them the support that they need.
What do you in this role and in this program? Is there anything you're learning that you just had no idea about before? Like maybe are there things that you're starting to become aware of that you were like, oh my gosh, I didn't even see that,
Yes, I especially with what you talk about with rural communities, and I've been, at this kind of national level, headquarters level for some time now. And, I'm just in awe more and more as when we talk to actual individual communities and levee sponsors, there's so many good things that are happening, right? So I think there's a lot of great practices. There's a lot of great efforts put in place now to try to deal with some of the challenges of smaller communities or rural communities or areas that are hard to evacuate. I'm just really, the more conversations we've had, which has been great and exciting, I'm just really been super impressed with how communities have really thought of creative ideas and to solve some of these issues. And I think what's going to be very exciting about this program is it provides kind of this mechanism or conduit of putting forward and highlighting some of these best practices. Because I certainly, necessarily wasn't aware of certain things that may have been happening in Hartford, Connecticut, for example. And I'm sure someone probably in California wasn't aware that, those practices were happening. So I think it's really going to be a great place to, understand, like, what are the, creative ways people are trying to deal with some of these common challenges and kind of put forward those different practices so everyone can kind of see what's happening across the country.
So does this require, I guess this is, it seems like it's pretty challenging. Like you have to not only communicate with divisions and districts and FEMA, like, so you're dealing with other federal agency at the same time. How is that experience working with FEMA in this particular realm? How's it been for you specifically?
Yeah, I will say that FEMA's fully dedicated to this effort because they see the bigger picture, right? As the bigger picture is we've got to buckle down and kind of do this alignment up front if we want to see the benefits and awards later down the road with this program. So in the past decade plus where I've been working on levees, I have been working almost directly with FEMA. And for many years, I pretty much engage them almost every day because everything we do is related, whether it's, related to the NFIP mapping or risk communication and our messaging. And so, I've been lucky enough to build up those relationships. And so, I would say probably the biggest challenge is, FEMA as an organization will structure a little bit different than the Corps, where the Corps clearly outnumbers them, right? I believe FEMA probably has like 1,700 full-time staff, right? And we have 30,000. And so that's been the biggest challenge and we have that challenge internal with the Corps because we have so many different programs. So, getting all our ducks in a row and kind of getting everyone pointed in the same direction is always going to be a challenge. But I feel like over the years, we've been having these conversations about risk education, risk communication that really for the first time in my career today, I've actually seen, I just feel like we're at the point to make things happen. We're at the point where everything is coming together. Technology, methods, everyone's, kind of embracing flood risk, even though it's been in that terminology, even though it's a challenge. It's just, for me, finally coming together. So we'll make it, we'll prevail. I have no doubt about it. Because this is what everyone in this business wants to see happen. There's different ways to get there, and we're just trying to figure out the best way to get there, and that might be bumpy, but I think we're going to figure it out.
Yeah, earlier at the beginning, I mentioned that pretty much 2/3 of Americans live in a county with at least one levee, and I think a lot of people don't even realize just how many levees there are, how many miles of levees there are. Are there some interesting facts about levees in the United States that maybe most people don't know?
Yeah, I think what's interesting is, throughout the years and very, probably 20 years ago, maybe, there's always been this discussion that we don't know where all the levees are and we don't know what their conditions are. And so, because we had no idea, there was a lot of speculation about, how prevalent they were and what they are. And what's been really interesting is, over the last, I'll say 5 or so years, I believe we have done a very good job of identifying all the major levee systems that are throughout the U.S. I'm sure there are a few that, might be in places where we haven't identified them, but when the Corps of Engineers first created the National Levee Database, of course it was, because it was easy for us, we populated it with levees that we were involved in with a lot of detail. And so that was about 2,000 levees. And what we learned is behind just those levees, there's about 14 million people. As in the last 5 years, in partnering with FEMA, because through FEMA's National Flood Insurance Program, they pretty much map all the floodplains in the country. And if there's a levee there, they'd identify it. So we took all their information where they identified levees and added it to the database. Now we know there's 7,000 structures that have been identified as a levee. And even though we added 5,000 levees to the inventory, the population behind those levees was only another 3 million. So that kind of, if that makes sense. So 2,000 core levees had 14 million people. Another 5,000 levees we identified only had another 3 million people. So that kind of tells me we've started to identify, any major levee system that is around heavily populated areas, or maybe, around significant economic areas like potential agriculture and so forth. I feel like we've identified, because many of the levees that we added actually had no buildings behind them or no people. So again, we'll continue to build the database and understand it. We know, what the longest levee is. I think it was like 300 miles. We know. So that's the fun part. If you visit the National Levee database, there's all, you can see, and even the National Levee Safety Program website itself, which is www.leveesafety.org, you're going to see some interesting kind of stats on levees as we know it. How many closures there are, how many schools are behind them, because data is so readily available right now. Our jobs are getting easier in consolidating data.
What have I not asked you that I probably should have asked you?
Well, I probably would ask me, what should we expect to see over the next couple of months? And I would answer, expect the unexpected. If COVID has taught us anything, it certainly was that. And our team has learned to be agile and completely adaptable. So right now, and I had mentioned that we're in the process of designing this new National Levee Safety Program. So basically, we talk about the design of the program in phases, 3 phases, and we're in phase 1. So right now, we're at the beginning. And in this beginning part, we want to gather input from our stakeholders on the direction of this program. So basically, we want to understand the needs that are out there, the key challenges that folks have with levees. What are the key priority things that this program should try to address? And so for the last year or so, we've been planning the strategy really focused on stakeholder engagement, because this program is going to be driven by the needs of the stakeholders. And we've been planning for many months of hosting a series of in-person public meetings across the country. And we were scheduling them for January and February. Well, of course, with COVID situation, we've had to pivot, and we've decided to switch all those in-person meeting dates to all virtual workshops instead. And so we're rapidly retailoring those workshops right now. And of course, we'll continue to hope to be able to host in-person meetings maybe later this year. But what I just want to kind of leave you with is that we really hope that anyone interested in getting involved in providing us feedback on this program, I think the key resource to go to is visit our website. We have a dedicated website just for this national program. It's www.leveesafety.org. Anyone can go there to get more information. There's an email address if you have, you can send in questions. And on that website, there's a Get Involved page. And that's where we talk about phase 1 and the specific areas we would like to get feedback for this initial stage. And phase 1 comments, our comment period really ends March 31st. So,
March
we ask
31st
that folks,
of 2022? March 30th,
yes,
2022, okay.
Yeah, March 31st, 31st of 2022. So phase one is kind of ends there, and we want to solicit as much feedback as we can on those key needs and challenges. And that's going to help us shape the direction of this program because we're at the beginning. But also on that website, that's where you can go to register for the virtual workshops that are going to happen in January and February. And those virtual workshops are just an additional opportunity to listen to other stakeholders and provide information or feedback on levees of different roles and responsibilities. But there are other ways you'll see on the website that you can, folks can offer feedback. You can do it by email, you can do it by the forms that are on the website. We posted a notice in the Federal Register, so comments can be submitted there. So we're trying to offer a variety of different ways that, you know, we're hoping that folks can reach out and get engaged.
I know that was intended to be my last question, but that your answer actually made me think of another question. Have you had a chance to look at any of the submissions so far, or will you compile that after March, and then look at those, or are you guys are you doing that as they come in? How does that work?
Well, we officially kind of, I'll say, launched. So basically, we wisely tried to publicly announce our intent to create this program really kind of mid-December. So just, you know, for scheduling, you know, it kind of fell within the holiday season. So we hosted a series of webinars, and we launched the website, and then we posted the notice in the Federal Register. This week, what we intend to do is kind of remind people, you know, that this is started, and so what we'll do is kind of re-announce through emails. We'll post announcements on the website and try to kind of, you know, again, after the holidays, kind of let people know that this phase one has started and we're seeking feedback now. So our actual submissions, we've gotten maybe a couple, you know, but since we just recently kind of opened it up, you know, and kind of launched it, I didn't expect to have, you know, a lot of feedback to date.
Right.
So, but I expect hopefully it'll ramp up over the next month or so.
And you're looking for feedback from people all across the country, from whether you're a levee sponsor, whether you're someone who lives behind a levee, whether you have some other interest in a levee. You want as much feedback as you can get related to the overall, you know, program.
Yes, absolutely. And we wanted to try to help people focus kind of their attention. So it's just not this open-ended question. So what we try to do on the website, and we'll try to, you know, post the materials as well in the Federal Register notice, is we have a series of fact sheets. There's 5 of them. Okay. And each fact sheet describes a component of the National Levee Safety Program, its goals, you know, including the National Levee Database, you know, and where we are with it, and what we potentially are putting forward as ideas to further develop as part of the National Levee Safety Program. So those fact sheets are really important and kind of help, I think, folks, you know, maybe understand the purpose of this program and really the main areas that we're further developing or intend to further develop as we move along. And we would like feedback on those areas. And to also help kind of guide people in what we're asking questions about, we actually posted questions. So there's a series of questions that are in the Federal Register, and the same series of questions that are on our website, and they are associated with each fact sheet. So we're hoping that kind of helps, you know, steer people's thoughts towards some of the big picture questions. And of course, folks can just offer feedback on whatever they would like. Yeah, so really kind of recommend that before providing feedback, to kind of read the background materials and then, you know, kind of tailor feedback around those background materials.
And you really want involvement from communities and engagement with them.
Yes, because this program's for them, right? This programs are for the communities behind levees. The levee's not there, the levee's there for a purpose. I mean, whether it's agricultural purposes or, there's more populated areas, that is our goal. So anything, everyone that, has an interest or a stake or an equity related to the floodplain and to levees, so we'd like to hear from.
Well, Tammy, I really appreciate you for your time. Really appreciate you for giving us some of your time here. I know you'll have a lot going on, especially with that weather up there in the DC.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity and hope maybe we can do this again when we move farther along and just provide an update on where we are. Happy to offer that.
Exactly. Yeah. When you start phase 2, I'd certainly be very interested, and I'm sure a lot of people would be interested in hearing what some of the feedback you're getting is. And once again, that website is www.leveesafety.org.
That is correct.
Thank you for joining us for Corpstruction. Corpstruction is a production of the Tulsa District U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Public Affairs Office. This episode of Corpstruction was brought to you by the National Levee Safety Program. To learn more about the National Levee Safety Program, visit them on the web at www.leveesafety.org. Be sure to submit comments if you're interested in providing feedback, and be sure to read those 5 fact sheets and get some background before you comment. Thank you for joining us. Have a great day. Hi, everyone. This is Brandon Parrish, host of the Corpstruction podcast. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please consider liking, subscribing, or sharing it. If you have comments, questions, or even suggestions, please feel free to share them with us. We'd love your feedback. Thanks again.